There's a strange kind of confidence that fills the air when someone who knows little believes they know everything. It's the voice that interrupts an expert mid-sentence, the smug certainty of someone correcting you with information that's entirely wrong, the misplaced assurance of a man who reads one article and suddenly thinks he understands how the world works. We've all met them. Maybe at some point we've been them. This is the quiet tragedy of the Dunning-Kruger Effect, a psychological illusion that makes fools feel wise and the wise feel uncertain. It begins not with arrogance but with ignorance. Back in 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into two banks in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in broad daylight and robbed them. He smiled at the security cameras, confident and relaxed, as if he believed he were invisible. When the police caught him later that night, he was stunned, genuinely shocked that they could see him. "But I wore the juice," he said. You see, Wheeler had rubbed lemon juice on his face, believing it would make him invisible to cameras. He'd read somewhere that lemon juice could be used as invisible ink, and his mind made a leap. If it hides writing, it must hide faces too. It sounds absurd, laughable even. But when psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger read about this case, they saw something deeper. They saw a pattern that reached far beyond one foolish man. They began to ask a haunting question. What if the people who know the least about a subject are also the least aware of how little they know? And that question, that single unsettling possibility, would change how we understand human judgment forever. In a series of experiments at Cornell University, Dunning and Kruger tested groups of students on logic, grammar, and humor. After completing the tests, participants were asked to estimate their performance. The results were staggering. Those who scored the lowest, those in the bottom quartile, consistently rated themselves far above average. In their minds, they weren't failing, they were excelling. Meanwhile, the students who actually performed the best tended to underestimate themselves, doubting their ability even when their results proved otherwise. The data revealed something almost poetic in its cruelty. The less someone knows, the more they overestimate their competence. Not because they're arrogant, but because they don't know what they don't know. Their very ignorance shields them from realizing it. Imagine a man standing on a hill, surrounded by fog. From where he stands, the world looks small. He assumes he can see everything. But if the fog were to lift, he'd realize the horizon stretches far beyond what his eyes could once grasp. That's what ignorance does. It builds a fog, a false sense of clarity, and convinces us we've reached the edge of knowledge when we've only taken the first few steps. And the more dangerous part, that illusion feels good. It gives us certainty, and certainty, in a world of confusion, feels like power. We see it everywhere today, in online debates, in political arguments, in self-proclaimed experts giving advice on subjects they barely understand. Social media has become a stage for the Dunning-Kruger effect to perform at full volume. Everyone has a voice, a platform, and a certainty that their view is the truth. The less informed someone is, the more likely they are to shout the loudest, not out of malice, but out of blindness. Because knowledge, real knowledge, begins with humility. The more you learn, the more you realize how vast the unknown truly is. The expert, the true master, often hesitates, not because they lack confidence, but because they understand complexity. They've walked through the fog and seen how endless it is. Socrates once said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." He didn't mean literal ignorance. He meant awareness, the courage to admit the limits of your understanding. But in a world that rewards quick answers and punishes doubt, that kind of wisdom is rare. There's a subtle irony in this. The people most likely to seek improvement are often the ones who least need it, and the ones who most need growth are often convinced they've already arrived. It's a cruel twist of the human mind, the blind leading themselves. But maybe it's not entirely our fault. Evolution wired us this way for survival. Confidence, even false confidence, can be persuasive. It can attract allies, win arguments, and open doors. In the primal world, appearing certain could mean the difference between leading the tribe and being ignored. Nature doesn't always reward truth, it rewards effectiveness, and sometimes self-deception is the most effective illusion of all. Still, in the modern world, that illusion has consequences. When incompetence meets overconfidence in positions of power, when leaders, teachers, or influencers act from ignorance but speak with conviction, the ripple effects can be devastating. We begin to mistake loudness for wisdom, charisma for competence, and certainty for truth. And yet, if we look closer, there's something almost tragic about it. Most people caught in the Dunning-Kruger trap aren't villains. They're not trying to deceive anyone. They're trapped in a cognitive mirage, a reflection of knowledge that disappears when approached. They live in a world where everything seems simple, where every question has an easy answer, and where doubt feels like weakness. But doubt isn't weakness. Doubt is the birthplace of understanding. The moment you begin to say, "Maybe I'm wrong," is the moment you start to grow. That sentence, fragile and humbling, is the first step out of illusion and into awareness. I think about this often when I see how people argue today, how quick we are to correct, to dismiss, to declare absolute truth with trembling hands. We don't just want to be right, we need to be, because being wrong threatens the identity we've built around our beliefs. To admit ignorance is to strip away the armor we've forged out of certainty. But if we never remove it, we never learn. There's a story of a Zen master pouring tea for a student who came to learn. The student kept talking, boasting of his understanding, his readings, his insights. The master continued to pour until the cup overflowed. The student shouted, "Stop, it's full." The master looked at him and said, "So are you. How can I show you truth until you empty your cup?" That's the quiet antidote to the Dunning-Kruger effect. The willingness to empty your cup, to become a student again. In the end, wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing how much there still is to learn. It's about walking through the fog, not with arrogance, but with wonder. The fool thinks he has reached the summit. The wise man knows he's still climbing. And maybe that's the difference between ignorance and intelligence, not the amount of information in your head, but the openness of your heart to be wrong. Because the more you learn, the more the edges of your world expand. You begin to see connections you never noticed before, how every subject branches into another, how every certainty carries a shadow of doubt. You start to realize that the universe doesn't fit neatly into categories or slogans or confident declarations. It moves, it changes, it humbles, and if you let it, it teaches. Maybe that's what the Dunning-Kruger effect truly reveals, not just how easily we deceive ourselves, but how much potential lies hidden behind humility. Because the moment you stop pretending to know, you start to discover. The moment you let go of being right, you open the door to truth. And in that space, that quiet space between ignorance and understanding, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop seeing knowledge as a competition and start seeing it as a journey, a path that never ends, but always deepens. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real wisdom hidden beneath our foolishness, the courage to keep learning, even when the world insists we already know enough. When we talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect, we often picture the fool standing proudly on the small hill of his knowledge, arms crossed, voice loud, and ego untouchable. But what we rarely talk about is what happens next. What happens when that person at some point collides with reality, when life in its quiet way begins to chip away at the illusion of certainty? It doesn't always happen dramatically. Sometimes it's a moment so small, so ordinary, that it goes unnoticed until later, when the memory returns like a whisper. A student fails a test they thought they'd mastered. A leader makes a decision that backfires spectacularly. A man argues confidently about a topic at dinner, only to discover moments later that everyone else at the table knows more than he does. And in that moment, the world tilts, the curtain lifts. The fog parts just enough for a glimpse of something humbling and real. That's the turning point, though it rarely feels like one. It feels like embarrassment, like shame, like the sting of self-awareness burning through the pride we didn't know we carried. But that sting, that discomfort, is actually the birth of wisdom, because what follows is not just humility, but clarity. There's a strange beauty in realizing how wrong you've been. It's like stepping outside after years in a dim room and feeling the sunlight for the first time. At first it hurts your eyes, but gradually you begin to see more than you ever did before. This is what Dunning and Kruger also found in their research, that once people improve their competence, once they truly learn and grow, they begin to see their earlier ignorance for what it was. Their self-perception corrects itself. Confidence falls, but accuracy rises. They no longer overestimate their skill, but understand it in context. They no longer assume mastery, they pursue it. And that pursuit, that hunger to keep learning, becomes its own kind of quiet strength. We live in a time when everyone wants to look like an expert. Opinions are dressed up as facts, belief masquerades as knowledge. People mistake conviction for intelligence, but real intelligence doesn't announce itself. It listens, it studies, it pauses before speaking. It has no need to shout because it knows the truth can't be forced. It can only be discovered. That's what separates wisdom from cleverness. Cleverness wants to win. Wisdom wants to understand. And if you look at the greatest thinkers throughout history, Socrates, Confucius, Einstein, even modern scientists who stand on the frontier of the unknown, they all share the same humility. The deeper they go, the less certain they become, because they realize that every answer only opens 10 more questions. Every truth carries paradoxes. Every discovery reveals new mysteries. Einstein once said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." That wasn't false modesty. That was awe. The recognition that knowledge is infinite and we are finite. But in today's world, humility often feels like weakness. Doubt is mocked. Caution is seen as hesitation. People don't want nuance. They want certainty, sound bites, slogans. And so the Dunning-Kruger effect thrives, not in the shadows but in plain sight. It's in comment sections, podcasts and politics. It's the confidence that drowns out complexity, the voice that says, "I know," when it should be asking, "Could I be wrong?" Yet there's hope in that question, because the moment you ask it, you've already stepped off the hill of illusion and onto the mountain of truth. Every expert you admire once stood at the bottom, uncertain, clumsy, and overconfident. Every wise person you know has been a fool at some point. What defines them isn't that they were never wrong, but that they refused to stay wrong. They learned, they listened, they fell in love with the process of correction. And maybe that's the hidden gift of the Dunning-Kruger effect, that it forces us to confront our limitations, to recognize that certainty is a cage and curiosity is the key. Think about it. The world doesn't need more people who are always right. It needs more people who are willing to learn when they're wrong. It needs minds that can hold contradiction, that can say "I don't know" without shame, because from that space of not knowing, innovation is born, compassion is born, wisdom is born. The irony is that the very feeling of doubt we try to escape is the same one that leads us closer to truth. Doubt humbles us, it grounds us, it makes us pay attention. When we begin to doubt, we begin to see. There's a quiet moment every learner reaches, somewhere between ignorance and mastery, where they realize the path never really ends. There will always be more to know, more to unlearn, more to understand, and that realization, though humbling, is strangely freeing, because once you stop pretending to be perfect, you can finally begin to grow. So perhaps the greatest act of wisdom in our time isn't knowing everything, but daring to say, "Teach me." Maybe that's where all true knowledge begins, not in certainty but in surrender. In the end, the fool who thinks he is smart and the wise man who knows he is foolish are separated by a single moment of honesty, the moment when one of them finally looks in the mirror and admits, "I don't know enough," and from that moment on, the journey begins. Somewhere deep in every human mind, there's a fragile balance between what we know and what we think we know. That tension between confidence and uncertainty shapes almost every decision we make. It influences how we speak, how we argue, how we lead, even how we love. And when that balance tips too far toward confidence without competence, it doesn't just make fools, it makes casualties of reason, of truth, of humility. Because the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't only a scientific curiosity, it's a mirror. It shows us something uncomfortable about the way our minds defend us, how we protect our fragile sense of competence by exaggerating it. We build castles of illusion around our ignorance, not to deceive others, but to protect ourselves from the shame of not knowing. It's easy to laugh at others for their delusions. It's harder to admit that we too are often standing on that same shaky ground. Think of how early this begins. As children, we mimic confidence long before we understand it. A child insists they know the answer in class, even when they don't. They raise their hand boldly, not because they're sure, but because they crave that moment of approval. And when the world rewards certainty more than curiosity, we grow up learning to fake it, to speak louder than our doubts. By adulthood, that habit becomes armor. We learn to sound sure, even when we're lost, to nod as if we understand, to argue, not because we've reasoned deeply, but because we can't stand to feel small. And the irony is that the people who admit they might be wrong, who pause, reflect and listen, are often dismissed as uncertain, when in truth they're the ones standing closest to reality. Maybe that's what makes the Dunning-Kruger effect so quietly tragic. It's not that fools are bad or dangerous by nature. It's that they're unaware of the harm their illusion causes, both to themselves and to others. The louder they cling to their false certainty, the further they drift from the truth. But there's a way back, and it begins, always, with humility. Humility isn't weakness. It's strength under control. It's the quiet courage to admit, I might be wrong. It's the foundation of every breakthrough, scientific, artistic, spiritual. Because when you stop pretending to have all the answers, you create space for discovery. There's a moment in every scientist's life and in every thinker's when they must confront the vastness of what they don't know. They stand before the unknown, and instead of claiming mastery, they bow to it. That act of surrender isn't defeat, it's reverence. It's the recognition that the truth is bigger than our ego. And maybe that's the lesson the Dunning-Kruger effect leaves us with, that we are not built to know everything, but to learn endlessly. That the mind's greatest virtue isn't certainty, but adaptability. So how do we live with that awareness? How do we protect ourselves from falling into the trap of false confidence? We start by listening, truly listening, not to respond, not to defend, but to understand. We seek out voices that challenge us, ideas that stretch us, truths that make us uncomfortable. We ask questions that don't flatter our intelligence but reveal its limits. And most of all, we learn to sit with not knowing, to resist the rush to fill silence with opinion, because in that silence, wisdom begins to form. The fool rushes to speak. The wise person pauses. That pause, small, almost invisible, is where humility lives. It's where growth hides. If you've ever been proven wrong in public, you know that sting, that burning mix of embarrassment and realization. But beneath that sting is a gift. It's the world's way of saying, you're learning. Each moment of being wrong is a doorway. Uncomfortable, yes, but leading somewhere higher. If you walk through it, you come out sharper, clearer, freer. And once you've crossed that threshold enough times, you stop fearing it. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop performing intelligence and start embodying curiosity, because intelligence is not knowing everything, it's knowing how to learn anything. In that light, the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't a curse on humanity. It's a mirror we must keep looking into. It reminds us that knowledge without humility becomes arrogance, and humility without effort becomes passivity. But when you bring the two together, humility and effort, you find balance, you become teachable, and that perhaps is the true mark of wisdom, not brilliance, not genius, but teachability, the ability to say again and again, show me what I've missed. If you look around, you'll see that the people who truly inspire us, the artists, scientists, philosophers, mentors, aren't those who claim to have it all figured out. They're the ones who live in constant awe, who stand beneath the stars and whisper, there's still so much I don't understand. And maybe that's the most honest kind of intelligence there is. Because if fools think they're smart and the wise know they're still learning, then the real difference between them isn't knowledge, it's awareness. One sees a small hill and calls it the world. The other sees the world and realizes they've barely begun to climb. So the next time you feel certain, unshakably, immovably certain, pause. Ask yourself, what if I'm standing on the hill, not the mountain? That single question can save you from 1,000 foolish moments. It can open your mind again. It can make you human again. And if there's one truth that humbles every one of us, no matter how much we think we know, it's this. Wisdom isn't about standing taller than others. It's about bowing deeper before the vastness of everything you'll never fully understand. There's a quiet moment that comes to everyone who truly begins to learn. A moment when the noise of ego fades and the world suddenly feels wider than it ever has before. It's the moment you realize that the truth isn't something you own, it's something you pursue. That realization, gentle as it seems, is one of life's great awakenings. Because from that point on, every conversation becomes a classroom, and every person you meet becomes a teacher, even the ones you once dismissed. The Dunning-Kruger effect, for all its irony, isn't really about foolishness. It's about blindness, the blindness that comes from thinking we've seen the whole picture when we've only glimpsed a corner of it. But blindness can be cured. Awareness, humility, curiosity, these are its medicine. The real tragedy isn't ignorance, it's arrogance. Because ignorance admits it doesn't know. Arrogance insists it already does. You can see this dynamic everywhere, in politics, in business, in religion, in relationships. How many conflicts begin not because someone sought the truth, but because someone couldn't bear to be wrong? How many friendships have ended over pride, masquerading as certainty? How many opportunities for learning have we missed simply because we were too busy defending our image of being right? It's heartbreaking when you think about it, because the price of false confidence is so small to admit, yet so heavy to carry. We trade authenticity for illusion, growth for comfort, and wisdom for applause. We choose the safety of being sure over the risk of being wrong, and in doing so, we close the door to discovery. But life in its patience keeps offering second chances. It keeps humbling us, a mistake, a failure, a conversation that doesn't go the way we planned. Each one is a quiet invitation to see more clearly, to peel back another layer of illusion. The truth is, everyone is wrong about something right now, even you, even me. Somewhere in your beliefs, your memories, your certainties, there's a blind spot, and that's not a flaw, that's being human. The only real danger is pretending it isn't there, because the moment you begin to question, really question the foundations of your own knowledge, you start to think differently. You begin to understand that the mind is not a fortress, it's a window. Its strength doesn't come from walls, but from the light that passes through. So ask yourself, when was the last time you changed your mind, not out of pressure or fear, but because you learned something that humbled you? Because the frequency with which you change your mind may be one of the best indicators of how alive your intelligence truly is. There's an old saying, the fool knows everything, the wise man learns from everyone. It's not poetic coincidence, it's psychological truth. The fool is closed, the wise man is open. One lives in a room of mirrors, the other walks under an open sky. And if we were to walk under that same sky together, really look up and see how vast it is, we might understand what all this really means. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just about how some people overestimate themselves. It's about all of us, standing somewhere between what we know and what we've yet to understand. It's about the endless climb toward clarity, the humility to keep walking even when the summit disappears into the clouds. The most intelligent people I've ever met rarely called themselves intelligent. They carried their knowledge with grace, not weight. They asked more questions than they answered. They were gentle with the ignorance of others because they remembered how easily it hides inside us all. They didn't debate to dominate. They conversed to connect. That's what wisdom does. It softens you. It makes you curious instead of combative. It replaces the thrill of being right with the peace of understanding. And maybe that's what the world needs most right now. Not more experts, not more arguments, but more students of life. People willing to say, I don't know, but I want to learn. People willing to pause before reacting, to listen before judging, to think before declaring. Because when we do that, when we bring humility back into the conversation, something profound begins to happen. We stop mistaking loudness for intelligence. We stop confusing certainty with truth. We start to see that learning is not a destination, but a way of living. In that sense, the Dunning-Kruger effect is not just a flaw of the mind, it's a reminder of the mind's beauty. It shows us how easily we can be fooled, yes, but also how capable we are of awakening. It reveals that the same brain that convinces us we know everything can, with awareness, learn to doubt, to question, to grow, and that's where real intelligence begins, in the moment you stop performing knowledge and start pursuing understanding. So the next time you meet someone who seems utterly convinced of their own genius, resist the urge to mock them. Instead, remember that you've been there too. We all have. Smile quietly and keep walking your own path, the one that leads not to certainty, but to clarity. Because at the end of the climb, when the fog finally lifts, you'll realize something simple but profound. Wisdom was never about being the smartest person in the room, it was about being the most willing to learn, and that in the end is the truest kind of intelligence, not the confidence of fools, but the curiosity of those who know how little they know.